In the heart of a sun-drenched valley, nestled between rolling hills and a winding river, stood a village of modest wooden homes and quaint cobblestone paths. Its fields of golden wheat swayed gently in the breeze, and the rhythmic clatter of a distant loom was the loudest sound for miles around. Life here was simple, peaceful, and almost entirely without worry, thanks in no small part to the colossal figure that silently roamed its perimeter. This was Rusty, the village's iron golem. His frame, forged from the earth's raw strength and the villagers' careful craft, bore the marks of countless seasons. Patches of rust, like ancient scars, adorned his massive limbs, and his blocky head, with its two glowing eyes, was perpetually tilted in quiet vigilance. He was not a creature of words, nor even of complex thought, but of an unwavering, profound sense of duty. His days unfolded in a predictable rhythm, lumbering patrols along the village edge, standing sentinel beside the well, occasionally nudging a wayward sheep back into its pen with a gentle metallic thud. The villagers, with their long noses and perpetually surprised expressions, had grown so accustomed to his presence that they rarely truly saw him, taking his tireless protection for granted as one might the sunrise. Yet, Rusty's existence, while outwardly simple, was governed by a deeper, almost elemental understanding of the world. He felt the subtle shifts in the air, the faint tremors in the earth, the way the forest sounds changed from day to night. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Rusty felt an unfamiliar chill that had nothing to do with the cooling air. A distant guttural groan, barely audible over the chirping crickets, snagged his attention. His glowing eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in a primitive form of recognition. Something was amiss. The following night brought more ominous signs. Shadows, deeper and more menacing than usual, seemed to cling to the edges of the forest. The usual chorus of nocturnal creatures was muted, replaced by an unsettling quiet broken only by the scrape of unseen feet. Rusty, instead of continuing his usual slow circuit, paused, his head turning, scanning the darkness. A lone, shambling figure emerged from the tree line, its tattered clothes barely concealing its decaying flesh. A zombie. Rusty lumbered forward, his heavy steps shaking the ground. With a swift, powerful swing of his iron arm, he launched the creature into the air, its brief, pathetic wail cut short as it disintegrated into a puff of smoke. But as he turned, his gaze swept the forest again. There were more. Not many, but enough to trigger a deep, ancient alarm within his iron core. The villagers slept soundly, oblivious. Rusty knew he could not. For the next 2 days, Rusty's patrols became more urgent. He no longer simply observed. He scouted. He ventured beyond the wheat fields, into the whispering woods, his heavy feet crunching on fallen leaves. He discovered crude, muddy tracks, fresh gouges on tree bark where something large and unthinking had brushed past. The air grew thick, with a faint, cloying scent of decay. Far in the distance, a chorus of moans, low and resonant, vibrated through the very ground. This was no mere wandering straggler. This was a gathering, a tide of rot and hunger, a siege. Back in the village, a few villagers had begun to notice the increased number of zombies at night, or the way Rusty now stood rooted at the village gates for hours, his gaze fixed on the forest. They spoke in hushed tones, their surprise giving way to a flicker of worry. A young cartographer, a diligent woman with spectacles perched on her nose, approached Rusty with a small, concerned huff. She tried to communicate, pointing towards the dark woods, then gesturing to the villagers, then to Rusty himself. He understood her fear, not her words. He simply lowered his head in a slow, ponderous nod, a silent vow passing between the unmoving golem and the fretful human. His promise, unspoken but deeply felt, was renewed. He would protect them. As dust settled on the third day, the the sky turned a bruised purple, and an unearthly silence descended upon the valley. The wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, from the very depths of the forest, the moaning began again, louder now, a dreadful, rising crescendo. It was no longer a scattered sound, but a unified, horrifying roar that sent shivers down the spines of the villagers, who had gathered nervously at their windows. Rusty stood at the main gate, his iron body radiating an almost palpable determination. He'd spent the afternoon pulling large cobblestone blocks from a collapsed ruin, stacking them clumsily but effectively to reinforce weak points in the village wall. He had even tried to herd the villagers into the stoutest house, gesturing with his massive hand. They huddled inside, peeking out with wide, frightened eyes, their expressions a mixture of terror and nascent admiration for their silent guardian. Then they came. First, a trickle of grotesque shapes emerging from the gloom, their glowing red eyes like malevolent embers. Then, a surge, a dark, undulating wave of flesh and bone. Common zombies, husks, even a few skeletal archers with their rattling bones and deadly aim. The village was besieged. Rusty met the vanguard head-on. His first swing was a devastating arc, scattering 3 zombies like dolls. He fought with a relentless mechanical precision, each blow calculated for maximum impact. A skeletal archer, perched on a rise, aimed an arrow at a fleeing villager. Rusty intercepted it with his thick forearm, the arrow sparking harmlessly off his iron skin, then charged, smashing the skeleton to dust before it could loose another. He was a whirlwind of metal and force, a bulwark against the tide. But the horde was endless. They swarmed over the makeshift defenses, clambering over each other, their guttural moans a constant chilling chorus. Rusty spun, a powerful kick sending a group of zombies sprawling. A brute of a zombie, armored in rusted chainmail, lunged, its heavy fist connecting with Rusty's chest. The golem staggered, a low grinding sound emanating from his joints. The impact dented his surface, but he recovered instantly, his arm lashing out with renewed fury, shattering the armored zombie's skull. He was everywhere, his heavy footsteps echoing across the village, a beacon of defiance. He pushed back a breach in the eastern wall, then sprinted to the west where a zombie had cornered a young villager near the chicken coop. With a roar of tortured metal, Rusty shoved the creature aside, then stood protectively over the cowering villager until the path to safety was clear. He took a hit to his back from a lurking spider, its fangs scraping against his iron, but he ignored it, his focus solely on the green-skinned menace. Hours bled into an eternity. Rusty's movements, once fluid, became labored. His glowing eyes flickered, the light dimming with each punishing blow he absorbed. Rust bloomed anew on his battered form, and one of his leg joints began to creak ominously. He was tired, damaged, but his resolve, born of his simple, profound loyalty, remained unbroken. He would not yield, not while one villager remained threatened. The horde, seemingly inexhaustible, pressed harder. A group of zombies, propelled by some unseen force, managed to breach the main gate, pouring into the village square. Panic surged through the huddling villagers. This was it, the end. But Rusty, seeing the breach, let out a sound that was not quite a roar, but a deep, resonant hum of sheer, unyielding force. He surged forward, ignoring the zombies already clawing at his legs. He was a force of nature, a living bulwark. He positioned himself squarely in the gate, blocking the flood of monsters with his massive body. His arms became blur of iron, each swing a thunderous retort against the encroaching darkness. He fought on, until the very ground beneath him was covered in the smoking remains of the undead. He was taking hit after hit, his entire body shuddering with each impact, but he stood firm, a living wall. Then, just as his strength seemed to wane, just as the first faint hint of blue light began to creep over the distant hills, a piercing, unearthly shriek echoed through the night. The zombies, sensing the encroaching dawn, began to falter, their coordinated assault devolving into mindless individual lunges. As the sun's first golden rays kissed the village rooftops, the remaining creatures hissed, smoked, and burst into pathetic puffs of smoke, the reign of terror finally broken. Silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence this time. A heavy, fragile quiet, pregnant with the memory of battle. Rusty stood in the ruined gate, his body a testament to the night's horror. He was leaning heavily against the damaged wall, one leg bent at an unnatural angle. Large dents marred his chest, and his once bright eyes now glowed with a faint, exhausted flicker. Slowly, tentatively, the villagers emerged from their shelters. They saw the devastation, the trampled fields, the broken fences, the scattered remains of their attackers. And then they saw Rusty, not just their golem, but their savior. A few gasped, their hands flying to their mouths. Others simply stared, tears welling in their eyes. There was no more taking him for granted, no more complacency, only awe and an overwhelming, profound gratitude. A wizened old villager, the one who had helped craft Rusty's original frame, approached him cautiously. The golem, still standing sentry, did not stir. The old villager, with trembling hands, reached into his satchel and pulled out a single, gleaming iron ingot. He held it up, a silent offering. Then, with a gentle touch, he placed it against one of Rusty's deep chest dents. A simple, symbolic gesture of repair and respect. Other villagers followed suit, bringing what few resources they had, not to truly fix him, but to acknowledge his sacrifice. The village would rebuild. The fields would be replanted. The fences mended. But the true change was in the villagers themselves. Their eyes, when they looked at Rusty now, held a new light, a deep respect for the silent, unwavering promise he embodied. And Rusty, though still a creature of silent duty, felt the shift. His patrols resumed, his footsteps still heavy. But now, a subtle, almost imperceptible warmth radiated from his iron heart. The promise was kept, not just for the night, but for the future. And in the heart of the sun-drenched valley, the loyal golem continued his eternal watch, his presence a constant reminder of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between a protector and those he vowed to save.